Welcome once again to the Wednesday webinar with Boundary Systems. My name is Michael Wimberly, and once again I will be conducting the webinar today. Today's topic is drawing and model markup in Windchill 11. So the general overview is the same as we've had in the past. So once again, our general objective is to review and demonstrate drawing and model markup in Windchill 11. And then the general agenda for that, for the webinar itself, is a brief introduction of me and Boundary Systems, a topic overview as far as what we're going to discuss, and then of course the product demonstration, and then after that a short Q&A session as well. So the first thing, of course, myself, I'm Michael Wimberly. I'm a senior technical specialist here at Boundary Systems. For me personally, I actually work out of Cincinnati, Ohio, but Boundary Systems is actually out of Cleveland, Ohio. So I am remote. I've been working with PTC products for over 20 years now. I am a certified trainer for Creo and Windchill classes, as well as a certified implementation specialist for Windchill as well. Boundary Systems, once again, Boundary Systems is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, not far from the airport. Some of our partners include PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, VW, ZWCAD, and other technology companies. We are once again, we've been one of the top growing companies inside the Cleveland area. And some of our capabilities, of course, include but not limited to product lifecycle management, data management, CAD and design consulting, simulation, and product development. And what you simply see on the right side of the overhead is just simply some of the companies that we've worked with in the past or currently work with. This isn't the entire list of companies. It's just a few of them that we've listed. This slide kind of changes off and on just to show additional companies. So once again, for us and the efforts that we've put in, we have had multiple industry awards. So over the last couple of years, we've been in the Inc. 5000. We've also been in the Weatherhead 100, which is Northeast Ohio's fastest growing companies. And we've been in that for the last couple of years. And once again, some of our major accreditations include Windchill's certified implementer through PTC, of course, a PTC preferred service provider and PTC certified training partner. With that means that we actually do have a training center in Cleveland, but we can also do remote training, so we can either come on site, do training. We can actually do training in other cities when we go in and find the facilities to do those as well. So we do training all over the country. All right, and then once again, some of the solutions that we offer the suite of PTC products. We also offer Solid Thinking, eTraj, Modex, as well as Flow EFD for Mentor Graphics, and then of course ZWCAD we also offer as well. All right, so any questions that you may have from a technical standpoint, you can always contact me. And once again, Michael Wimberly, my phone number is 513-415-0747. My email address is mwimberly@boundarysys.com. Or if you have any sales related questions, you can contact Carrie Dillon, and her number is 440-409-5898, or her email is cdillon@boundarysys.com. All right, so this is just a general picture. Anybody that's been in the industry for any type of period of time has seen this. It's a drawing that you've created or somebody else has created, and they've either handed it to you or you've handed it to somebody else, and it comes back and it looks like they bleeded on it. So you can have small markups where, oh, just change this note, or an entire markup of a drawing that basically shows that they want to go in another direction than what you initially modeled. So it can be, like I said, something very simple or something very complicated. But with that, you still need to do markups. And with markups, it's usually a printed out drawing that you have. You print it out, you hand it to somebody. Once again, they come over with it. We know that the nice red pen that they have, or if they're really nice to you, a big red marker that they have to do the markups on. They may have a little highlighter that highlights the things that you've done correctly. Maybe a green highlighter, as we see on this one. It may be a yellow one, depends on what they're doing. Just to enunciate the things that need to change inside of the drawing itself. So with that, you know, there are checking processes. The checking continues to happen. But the thing is, when you do that checking process and that checking process is a piece of paper, then at some point, the risk of that piece of paper basically winding up somewhere that no one knows is pretty good. Or once again, we're going in and we're saying, okay, we don't need it anymore. So we go in and we delete it, or sorry, not delete it. We shred it, we throw it away, whatever we want to go through and do with that. But then, you know, 2 weeks later, hey, didn't we go in and change this? Well, you don't have that reference that you had before that showed the markups that you did on that particular drawing. Well, what we're going to go in and do is now we're going to go in and talk about a new way of doing it. So instead of going in and having that piece of paper that you're going to go through and mark up on, we're actually going to do it the electronic way. We're going to do it within the system. So within the Creo View functionality, they have the ability to do markups. We're actually going to go in and use Creo View Lite, which is one that comes standard with Windchill. But there are some additional ones, such as MCAD, that can also be used. And then we'll also see that not only can we mark up 2D drawings, but we can also go in and mark up our 3D models as well. So we can actually have different views in our model that we can go in and orient our model in and then do markups based on that. So it's basically creating 3D markups inside of our model. We can attach different notes to surfaces, or we can go through and add just simply 3D notes inside of the actual drawing, inside of the model itself. Once again, the benefit of that is that when you go in and create your markups, those markups don't get lost. They're associated to the actual 3D model itself. So it just simply becomes another viewable that is now able to be seen directly inside of Windchill. So we'll see that as well. And then what we'll also look at is when we do those markups in our Creo View, when we create those annotations, we'll also see how we can go through and now attach those to the actual change process. So we can do the markups and then actually kick off a change review and then actually attach that markup to the actual change process so it follows the change process so that once again, anybody can view it. And that's the benefit here with doing them in the 3D model, is that anybody can view these. If they have access to the model, they have access to the viewables, and it's just simply another viewable that's inside of that particular model. So we can now go through and store that, and once again, it stays with that model as long as that model is existence inside of your Windchill system. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and jump into a demonstration. All right, so what we have here, I've gone in and started in. So once again, this is Windchill 11. And now we're going to go through and simply start off. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with an actual drawing. So I have a drawing here. I'm just going to simply select on it and tell it to go ahead and open it up in Creo View. All right, so here's my Creo View session, and there's the actual drawing. So there's two different formats that you can use. I won't say two different formats. There are two major formats that you can use within inside of Creo View. One of them is a PLT file, which is simply a plot file, and that gives you the full markup capabilities inside of Creo View. You can also export them as or have them published, I should say, as a PDF file. And if you have the Adobe suite, then you can do your markup using Adobe. Once again, and just simply have Adobe integrated into Creo View so that you can actually use that directly inside of your Creo View session. So that's something that you can go through and do. Right now, we simply have a PLT file that we can go through and use that we're using for this one. And once again, this is the plot file of the actual drawing. All right, now for this, there's a tab right here for markup. And what you'll see when we go into the model, we'll have a few more things that we can go through and use inside of here. So simply, we can go through and add notes. We can add a note, simply a standalone note, or we can come over and add a note with a leader if we want to point to something specific. We can go through and simply add leaders, different types of leaders that we can go through and add. We can also go through, if we're doing highlighted an area, we can go through and specify a shape that we want to go through and use. So we have squares and ovals, and then we can actually go through and sketch the outline of the shape using a polygon. And then we simply have freehand sketching that we can do as well. We can also go through and add GTOLs. as you can see here. And then we can also do measurements, and those measurements can be displayed on the drawing as well. So let's just go ahead and first add a note. So I'm going to go through and just simply add a standard note, and I'm going to place it right there. I'm going to say, somehow I got out of there, add standard note set. Now, with that, as you can see, it populates it down here on the drawing, but I can also go into the format and change how that note is displayed. So I can go through and change the actual size of the text. So if I want it to be a larger area, I can go through and make the text larger. This is once again lock annotation. So when I'm zooming, the annotation will actually go through and maintain its size. I can go through and specify the shape. So right now it's doing a rectangular shape around my text. I can do a hexagon shape. If I want to go in and fill in a different area, triangular, however you want to go through and manipulate that area. Now, not only can I go in and do that, I can also go through and specify the color of the text. So with the text color, maybe I want the text color, yellow. So I can go through and do that. Now my text color will be yellow, but of course with the background being kind of a cream color, those two don't match. So I can come over here and change it to a darker color so that now it actually stands out. So I have the ability to go through and manipulate that as well, either any of those inside of there. So there's my note, and then I can go in and of course reposition it where I want to, and just simply telling it in that area, go in and add my standard note set. I can also come over here with, let's do a freehand and specify, in here that what I'm going into highlighting, that's that area. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'm going to go in and add a note with a leader. I'm going to go through and specify that area right there, I want to go in and replace views with exploded ISO view. And once again, formatting, I can go in and change the formatting of that, and I can also go in and change the leader head as well as the tail of the leader. I'm going to go through and make that so there is no symbol on the end of it. The line style, I can go through and manipulate any of that as well. I can also go through and change the line width, and once again the color I can go through and manipulate. So that's the text color, and then the background, once again I can go through and change that as well. So anything I want to go through and manipulate, I can. As I said before, sorry, didn't mean to change the background to something else. Change it there. All right. And then there's the note. So then once again, I can go through and reposition the note however I want to, or once again, drag it inside of the actual area that basically is telling it to go in and replace the views. All right. So I can continue to go through and add additional information to this. Once again, if I want to go through and specify any type of geometric tolerancing, I can go in and do that as well. So if I want to go through and add a GTOL, I can go through and specify, what type of geometric tolerance I want, true positioning, and then I can call out, the actual tolerance values. I still have minimum and maximum, regardless of feature size type symbols I can go through and add, and then once again, I can go through and add that information, going to specify the datum or datums that I want to go through and use. Oops, sorry. So if I want to go through and add any additional datums, I can. And then with that, I will go through and then specify a leader that I wanted to come related to. So it's once again just going in and manipulating the display of the different information inside of the system. So as I said, we can then do our full markups. This is once again an assembly. If I want to go through and cross out different things or tell it to restructure the BOM, I can do that too. So I can go through and restructure the BOM, and then once again specify my note with a leader that basically tells it to restructure based on updated assembly. And there we have it. So, there's a lot of different things, so all the different markups that you do inside of part mode, inside of a regular drawing, paper drawing, you can go in and do here as well. So with that, let's go ahead and change that so that once again, it doesn't go through and maintain its size, because it can go in and kind of become kind of hairy. All right, so once again, go back in, refed everything, and then there's our, like I said, we can go through and add any additional information that we want, tell them to update the title block, whatever information that we want. So it's just like going in and doing markups for your actual a 2D piece of paper that you may have. Now we're just simply doing it in a 3D model. In a 3D plot file. Now with this, I will come over here and then save this annotation set. So I'm going to go through and save it. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this assembly update. And then once again, my name, because that's what I'm logged in as. I can add any different information, and then the comments I'm going to put and said update based on new design solutions, something like that. Now with that, this annotation that I just saved is now saved inside of this drawing. So when I come over and I actually close this out just to get out of Creo View as a whole, now when I go back into this model and go into the information page and I look at the contents tab, in that contents tab is now that viewable or the annotation set that I just created. So I can go directly to that and see its markup, or I can come back to the original one and view it. So either one I can go through and now use inside our view. Once again, as long as I have access to this, I can now go through and view that information. So even if I come over and select on the original one, it goes in and it pulls it up, but I always have access to that annotation that I just created. So over in my tree area, there's an annotation set, and that annotation set I can go directly to that. Just a quick reference to the question it asked, and I'll answer all the other questions at the end when we do the general Q&A. And they're asking, will Creo View only work inside of Internet Explorer with Windchill 11? That seems to be the issue right now, or the solution right now is Internet Explorer. I've tried it with Chrome and I tried it with Firefox, and it didn't work properly as far as pulling up the properly pulling up Creo View from inside of Windchill. So it does appear that Internet Explorer is what Windchill 11 is using until further notice. So once again, and that's a question based on what we were just doing here to be able to pull up Creo View directly. And it does do the same thing inside of Creo as a whole. If you use Internet Explorer as your browser, it will actually pull up properly as well. All right, so once again, we can always come back to our original And then if we want to create another markup on here, we can do that as well. So we can continue to go in and add additional sets. But once again, as you can see here at the top, there's our original and there's our markup. So we have direct access to that. And as I said, anybody that has access to this file will be able to go through and view this file as well. All right, so let's go back and let's go into an assembly. Actually, let's go into a part first, and then we'll pull up an assembly. I'll just pull something up. That's the one I'm looking for. So once again, opening Creo View. All right, and then once again, there's our part. And as you can see here, we have just some additional information now. So we not only have the markup tab that we can still go in and do, there's an additional tool tab, and we'll look at that mainly when we go into the assembly. And then sectioning we can do as well. Animation is there as well. So the main two we're going to deal with is, of course, the markup and the sectioning. So with markup, same thing. We can go through and create notes. The difference here is when we go through and specify our notes, when we do it with a leader, we can go through and then specify the actual geometry that we're actually associated with and say, I don't know, and I'm just going to put in a general note, actually, light finish surface. All right, so now I have that note there, and then that note is then attached to that specific surface. Now, because my part is red, you know, that we may want to go through and change that leader color just so it stands out a little bit more, and I'm just going to make it black just so we can see it a little bit better. All right, so once again, we can go through and add additional information. As I said, we can go, this is attached directly to the actual model itself. We can still go in and create notes, just kind of freehanding notes inside of here as well, and simply going in and saying make same changes to opposite hand. I'm just going to move that over. You know, just a general note once again that we can go through and add, but then we can also go through and do our different measurements. So I'm going to go through and measure some diameters. So there's diameter, and if I want to go through and display multiple diameters, I can go through and just simply hold down the control key, and I'm simply displaying those different diameters. Now at this point, these are temporarily on there. So as soon as I go over and I close out my measuring tool, which is what you've seen inside of Creo, as soon as I close it out, it's going to ask me if I want to go through and discard the measurements. So I can go ahead and say okay, and those go away. But if those were items that I wanted, and I wanted those displayed with respect to this model, then I can come over. Picked an edge that I didn't want. And then I can come over here and simply tell it to accept those values. Or once again, when I get out of it, I can go in and tell it to accept the values. So either way, and then once again, now I have those diameters now called out on the screen. And each one of those, of course, I can go through and move those, just kind of clean up, get them off of the model if I want to go through and do that. So then once again, I'm now dimensioning that particular value. So once again, I can continue to go through and add additional areas such as mass properties. I can go through the mass properties for this part, and it'll go through and now show me the mass properties that's been calculated for this particular part. And then the same thing here, I'll tell it to accept that, and that information will now be maintained even after I exit out of the display. So now my suggestion when you start going in and doing a lot of this is just like if you were doing like an exploded view inside of Creo and you want to actually show it on the drawing. My suggestion is to kind of find a view that you want to go through and lock it in at, and then create your orientations from that. That way you're looking at things pretty cleanly when you're actually viewing the information. And then once again with this, like I said, I'm showing you some of the simple stuff. Sectioning, we can always create a section view and it has the predefined sections like it does when you're inside of Creo. Or we can go through and go about each of the axes. I'm going to go about the x-axis. And then when I actually select on the plane for that, I get my drag handles just like I do inside of Creo. And I'm able to go through and manipulate that cross section just like I could before. So I'm able to go through and manipulate that as well. Same thing here, show boundaries, cap the section, you know, whether or not we're actually looking into it or is it actually going in and capping off the end pieces. No. So however we want to go through and manipulate that as well. If we don't want it, we just of course delete that section and continue to move forward. All right, so once again, any additional notes that we want, we can go through and add. Once again, geometric tolerancing, we can go through and add. So any of those things we can go through and specify in our particular model. If we want to know the overall size of this, generally, we can go through and do an envelope, once again, for the model, and it'll give us the overall size of it. And what we'll see is Y direction, X direction, which is basically the thickness, and then Z direction, and then X direction. So in this direction, once again being the Y, it's approximately 135.839 millimeters. The Z direction, once again, the thickness is a little bit over 24 millimeters, and then the overall length is almost 263. So just a hair under 263 millimeters. And then once again, if these are the items that I want to display, great. If not, then I won't go through and accept those. I can go ahead and continue with a different measurement. So, and then once I have everything on here, same thing, I can come over here and save my annotation set and just say critical information. And now that's that annotation set. Now, if I did decide, yes, I should have maintained that envelope, you know, and I keep that just so I have those values, you know, then I can just simply come over here and save it again. And it just simply updates that annotation set. All right, and then the same thing, once I go in and get out of this, and I go into the information page for this, there is the markup for that one as well. So all of that can be, once again, incorporated directly inside of the actual 3D models. So then when I go into an assembly, this one actually has 2 sub-assemblies, and you can see the data underneath those. So same thing here. I can come over here and maybe I want to look at this assembly by itself. Now, I'm in this top level assembly, but I can come over here and basically tell it to open up in a new view. Now, although I'm opening it up in a new view, anything that I'm doing is still going to be associated with that top level assembly. So I'm not doing a markup on this individual assembly. I'm simply doing a markup of this assembly in the upper level assembly. And the same thing here. I have all the same tools that I can go through and use like so. So I want to come over here and I want to create a note. So I want to create a note directly on this part. So I'm going to go in and do a note with the leader, and I'm going to reference this part directly. And I'm going to put it right there. Now, with this, I can come over and see that this is referencing that individual part. So same thing here, I can go in and type in the text that I want. But the other thing that's beneficial about this is that it also reads attributes from my model. So I'm going to come over here and say insert an attribute. When I do that, it brings up the attributes that are in my model. So right now, customer description, harness, modeling, and then of course all of the Windchill specific ones. And then we have a couple of other ones such as volume and weight, and then some PVS, which is basically the actual product view information. So down here, what I want to go in and do is I want to also display just the weight and the volume for this. So I can come over here and say weight, and now I can either insert the name or the value. I'm going to go ahead and insert the name first, and then inside the dialog box, I'm going to do a dash, and then I'm going to tell it to go ahead and insert the value as well. And that'll go through and populate the value directly for that model. Then I can come over to the next line, and then the next line I'm going to do the same thing for the volume. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and insert the name, and then once again inside of here, add my dash, and then insert the value. And it'll go through and insert that directly from my model, which is also beneficial because once again, when I'm inside of the model itself and it changes, this is reading the attributes directly from my model. So as they change, this value will actually update as well. So that'll always stay in sync with what I'm working on. All right, and then some additional things in here, such as your common name, which you can go through and use as well. And even how it was assembled. If you notice, it's actually using a constraint set, so you can actually see how that part was assembled into the existing model. And then once again, just some additional attributes that you can see here. So, all right, but once again, the main ones that you're looking at, of course, are the actual Pro E parameters that you would actually go through and use. And even with that, I can go through and see, specifically inside of here, okay, what is the actual state that this is at? So I don't want to know the entire life cycle. I want to know the state. And I can go in and let me know that this is currently at the design state. And if I want to go through and update that so I know what that is, which I probably should have done, I can do current state. And there it is. So now once again, that information is now populated directly to, or referencing directly that model from my actual assembly. So I can do the same thing for anything else. I'm just going to go in and add additional notes. Once again, referencing different parts. And check material type. Something simple like that. I can also, once again, still be able to go in and freehand. And once again, because I'm dealing with it in this view, I can go through and create. Come on, get my freehand. Let's undo what I just did. And now do my freehand. And I can come over here inside the assembly and specify, once again, another note coming off of there. and say, can this be larger and not compromise strength? Now, and then once again, this is inside of the actual assembly that I'm going in and doing these markups in. So all this can be done. And then once again, one of the other things that we have, of course, is the sectioning. And we can go through same thing, specify, I'm doing X direction sectioning. So once again, I pick on the border of the section and then I have my drag handles to still go in and manipulate. And currently it's set to go in and cut through everything. But just like inside of our Creo sessions, I can go in and deselect that I wanted to insert everything and just simply select the parts that I actually do want it to intersect or basically cut through. So I'm going to go ahead and select on these 4 parts here, and I'm going to say add those to selected. So now as I go through and now drag my cross section, come on, there we go. Now as I go through and drag my cross section, we can then once again just see those specific items cutting, as I said, just like we can when we're inside of the actual 3D model inside of Creo. Now the other thing that we can do is we have that, but we also are able to go through and specify a quarter cut as well. So we can then cut it in the second direction. Come on. There it is. And still use the drag handle to cut that as well. So as you can see here, it's cutting this area here. If I wanted to go further back, then I would need to go through and manipulate that to create a cut further back, and then be able to manipulate that to cut through some additional information. So because these are thin parts, I'm sure when we get into castings and things like that, you know, that would be a lot easier and even more useful to go through and see. But I did want to go through and show you that as well. So I will get rid of the quarter cut and just do a planar cut. And then for this one, actually for this view right here, I'm actually going to go through and remove that section just because of the notes that we have. And then the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and save these notes. And design notes. And then from here, you know, I have the annotation set for design notes. I can go back to the original one. And what I can also see is that each one of the items that I have now selected or visible inside of the different views. So if I want to see them both at the same time, I'm still able to go through and manipulate my windows to see both of those at the same time. And now once again, I did save that. So when I go back to the assembly, sorry, and I go into the content, I then see that markup that I just created for that particular one. Oh, I already have Creo View up, so let's close it out. And then once again, it'll pull up that markup directly. And then the same thing here, I can always go back to just a regular model, top level model, and begin to mark up there as well. So the thing that's beneficial here is, once again, I can go through and still do my 3D markups. I can create notes on the screen. I can create all kinds of different measurements. I can do sectioning. The one thing that I will show you, I'll go back into here, is that inside of the tools area, there is a design check. And one of the things that I do like inside of here is that one of the things that you can check is the view content. So what's inside of here? We have notes that are inside of here, and not only does it show notes, it shows what the notes are actually attached to. It shows a leader line. That leader line goes with a note. We have an additional note. Once again, this is attached to that item. We have a freehand sketch. So it shows us all those different things, and if they're associated with anything specific, it will highlight those as well. Now, the thing that I do like is that not only will it go in and highlight that, but if I just want to see the information that may have been associated with that note, I can then come over and have that item that is selected. Come on. That is selected on the screen. And I can go in and then isolate that so that now these weren't associated with any particular item, so those didn't disappear. But it goes in and removes any other notes that are associated with any other parts. So I can use an isolate to go through and just see what I'm looking at on the screen. And then once again, at any point in time, I can go through and basically tell it to unhide all and then go back to everything else again. So, all right, so once again, we can continue to go through and manipulate and add any additional information that we want inside of here. So once again, the benefit of this is being able to go through and now take your 3D models and your 2D drawings, and instead of having a piece of paper that you're basically going in and passing around, and then once again only one person can look at that item at a time, we can go through and actually create our different annotation sets inside of the 3D model, and then actually go in and use those inside of our actual models, and anybody can access those at any point in time. And as I stated before, one of the other benefits that we can do is for that particular item, when I go through and create my change request, I'm just going to say update design change check. And it's not a design issue because we did it right the first time. It's an improvement. And we can come over here. Once again, we have any affected end items. We don't have any of those. The actual affected item themselves, which is here. And then we can also go through, add attachments. Associated any different items over here. So inside of the affected items, as you can see here, there's an option for associate annotations. So I can come over here and tell it that I want to go in and edit the annotations. And this is the assembly that we were working in. And I can simply go in and tell it to add an annotation set, and it'll continue, and it'll show me all annotations that I have in there. And then I can simply go through and add that new annotation set that I just created as the annotation set for that particular item. And you can see that there is a link directly to that we can go through and use, and we can go in and now view that. So it'll bring it up, and then we simply go in and view the thumbnail like we normally would. So once again, not only are we just creating markups, but we can also go through and mark up things that we're thinking about for design change, or for things that we do want changed, and we can add that inside of our change request as well. And now once again, that follows this change request throughout its entire process. So that's once again one of the additional benefits that we have here. So once again, being able to do our markups directly inside of our Creo model, whether it's the actual 2D drawing that can be in either plot file or PDF file, and that is an integration that we'll need to go through and set up to actually have Adobe integrated with Creo View. So yes, and then that functionality will be available directly inside of Creo View, and once again have the markup still displayed here. So that is an actual integration. So that one of the questions was being able to integrate. So yes, that would need to be an integration with inside of Creo View to be able to use that. Um, and then um, once again have all the information here displayed on the screen very handily, and once again have anybody access that at any point in time and not lose it. Because as I stated before, we have a piece of paper. That piece of paper can end up in somebody's desk, in somebody's drawer, in somebody's trash can, and nobody knows where it is. Nobody can go back and verify that this was marked up the way it was supposed to. Now we have an electronic copy of that, and it goes through and has that, and it can actually go through and show you once again who did the actual markups and when they were actually done. So that's once again the benefit of using, the information within inside of Windchill to be able to do your markups directly inside of there. So not only it shows who did it, it shows when they did it, and once again that history is maintained with that particular object. So at this point, I should say, we are complete. Now, any questions? I do have a couple of questions already. One of them was the integration with Adobe. There is, like I said, there is an integration that needs to be done in order for the Adobe suite to work inside of Creo View. And it says the next one is, I wonder if the markup file can be attached or somehow included in a rework or rejection notice, assuming that the item has been promoted. I don't know if that can be done inside of just your regular promotion request, or even within that workflow if you have the rework. The only thing off the top of my head, the only way I can kind of see that working is if there is in your comments, you're kind of telling them to go there. I don't know of any way, and I haven't tried that, so that will be something that we can look into. But right now, just off the top of my head, I don't see anywhere in that form that will allow for the attachment of an annotation. But like I said, we can check it and verify that. So yeah, so right now, like I said, the best I can think of right now is just simply having a note inside of your rework that says, hey, view annotation set such and such, from the model. The next, is there any new capabilities in Creo View? And 11 that wasn't in the previous version of Creo View. I don't think there's any core updates to Creo View between 3.1 and 4.0 or whatever the latest version of it is. I don't think there's any core updates there. And the next one, are there any report options available instead of a creation of an individual change request to advise that a markup has been created? I think you may be able to do some type of a notification, like a trigger, that may be able to be kicked off. Once again, I'm not 100% sure, but I know there's multiple triggers that can be set up as far as being able to notify whomever that there's a markup. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything else from that. The next is, can markups be created and attached to library read-only files? Only way, it's an annotation, so it's a publication. You're not necessarily, I'm going through it in my head. You're not necessarily modifying the actual CAD file, you're modifying the viewable. If the library file is read-only, though, I think it may lock you out just for permissions, because of permissions. So I think if it's a read-only file, then you still don't have permission to modify the content of that particular CAD file. So that markup may not be able to be created if that file is a read-only. So if it's at, let's say, the release state, that markup more than likely won't be able to be created because of the lockdown that the release state has for that particular life cycle. So. All right. Are there any additional questions? And the things that I'll actually take note of the questions that are here, and I'll confirm any of the answers that I've been giving to the entire attendee list, so that you can so that you have the information. So I'll verify my answers for this just to make sure that what I'm saying is correct. And if I am correct, I'll just let you know that. If not, then of course I'll give you the updated information. So I will look into this just to make sure that what I'm telling you is the appropriate information. So once again, at this point, I am finished. If there are no additional questions, I do want to formally thank you all for attending the Wednesday webinar for the creating models, creating markups on your models and your actual drawings inside of Windchill 11. And I look forward to you attending the next ones. So have a great rest of the afternoon, and thank you once again.